In Christian Bible and Jewish Tanakh, there is a very interesting verse about the name of God, where God call himself I am that I am. And God asked Moses to tell the children of Israel that I am has sent Moses to them. Now this create much controversy between the Christians and the Jews when the later Christians interpret this I am in relation with Jesus Christ, when Jesus in the Gospel of John said, before Abraham was, I am. Now, Quran does talk about this and gives a very unique perspective on this, which in my view solve this confusion and clarify what it's being mentioned here. But before going to the Quran, if we look at the other scriptures, for example, the Hindu scriptures, we see a very strong parallel in statements like Ahaṁ Brahmāsmi, which means I am Brahman, I am God. Now, this was discussed in the Quran in 3 places: Surah Taha, Surah Naml, and Surah Qasas. And as you can see, in the 3 places in Taha verse 12 and 14, Naml verse 9, and Qasas verse 30, this was discussed. But to understand this, we have to start from the beginning of the story in the Quran. So in Taha, when Moses see a fire and he said to his family that stay here, I have seen a fire and perhaps I can bring you a torch from there. The Arabic word is biqabasin. Or I can find at the fire some guidance. The Arabic word is huda. Whereas in Surah Naml, Moses said to his family that indeed I have seen a fire, I will bring from that fire some information, khabarin, or news, or I will bring a burning torch or a shihab. And here he says an extra information that he gives so that they can warm themselves. And in Qasas, again, when Moses see the fire, he says that indeed I have seen a fire, perhaps I'll bring you from there some information, khabarin, or an amber or burning wood, zadwathin, from that fire. So you can see Moses is using different words and saying different things in different places of the Quran. Now, the anti-Muslim polemics from the Christians or from the atheists have often accused Quran to be repetitive. But the Quran is repetitive not without a purpose. It is repetitive so that we can unlock some inner meaning from this repetition, and we can understand the whole picture in much clearer way. So as you can see, Moses is saying different things in different places. Why that is so? I argue that this non-literal presentation of information in the Quran is key to understand what the Quran says in the next few verses. Quran is giving us hint and clue from the speech of Moses with his family that don't take whatever is coming up next as too literally, because Quran is not giving it too literally to us as well. So in Surah Taha, verse 11, then when he, meaning Moses, reached the fire, he was called, O Moses, I am your Lord. And the Arabic phrase is Inni ana rabbuka. So take off your shoes, you are in the sacred valley of Tuwa. I have chosen you, so listen to what is revealed. I am Allah. There is no God but I. The Arabic phrase is Inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana. So serve me and practice the prayer for my remembrance. Now the same thing is said into the Surah Naml verse 8 and 9 in a different way. Here God is saying, then when he reached the fire, meaning Moses reached the fire, he was called, blessed is he who is within the fire and he who is around it, and glorified be Allah, Lord of the worlds. Now on a side note, we know that Zoroastrianism used to revere fire. Blessed is he who is within the fire. But that's not God, because God is the Lord of the worlds, and it's not talking about God, but that would be a different topic for a different day. So in the next verse, God says, O Moses, it is I, Allah, the Almighty, the Wise. Innahu anallahu azizul hakim. You see, there is difference in the way God is mentioning it in Surah Taha and Surah Naml. The phrases are different, the terminologies are different, and it's again different in Surah Qasas, where God says, when he reached it, he was called from the right side of the valley at the blessed spot from the bush, O Moses, it is I, Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Inni anallahu rabbil alameen. Now, the first thing to understand is all these verses doesn't exactly say the same things like the other verses. They all give you some different versions and wordings. The other thing is, God is not speaking from that fire or from that burning bush, because you have to understand, this is not exactly literal. Moses' word with his family actually makes it clear that it's not exactly literal here. And the narrative in Taha, Namal, and Qasas, where God says in a different way the things about I am your Lord, I am Allah, and that makes it very clear that this is not absolutely literal. There are reasons why we should understand it as such. Because, see, Moses is not actually talking to his family in Arabic language. And God is also not revealing things to Moses in Arabic language. But we have to understand that perhaps God is not even revealing things to Moses in any language. It's just the meaning of it that transcends any human language that is most befitting of God, the transcendent, the Most High. Now, I won't go into much detail of these verses, but you can see the color codes where basically the same things are being said, but always the terminologies and the content of it is a bit different, meaning that this is not exactly literal. I will come back to it and explain it later in some other video, but a few points to note here. Number one is the literal interpretation of the Quran. How some of our Salafi brothers and friends argue that everything must be taken literally. But Quran doesn't give you that scope. If you read Quran carefully, Quran actually don't give you that option. The other thing is the modern linguistic, the way language works. Language is, in its essence, very metaphorical in nature. What we learned from, say, for example, someone like Ludwig Wittgenstein, that language doesn't represent reality, and the metaphorical nature of the language is its real nature. And all these are actually presented in a very summarized way in the Quran. We should look at the meaning of it and not fall into the trap of the wording of it, because of two reasons. One being language is not representative of the reality, but even more importantly, God Almighty transcends these human languages and the barriers and the limitations of these languages. If you want to read the whole story, you can pause and read it here, and hopefully in another video I will come back and describe it in more detail. But as I said, Quran shed light to what has created much confusion in the Judeo-Christian scriptures as well as in the Hindu tradition. Thank you.